So ever since I showed you guys these bracelets that I've been making, you guys have non-stop been asking me for a tutorial. So I am here to deliver that to you. I think this pattern is gorgeous, so much so that I'm currently making a collection out of it. So it seems like a good fit for a tutorial. So without further ado, let's get into it. So before we start, I want to lay some groundwork. This is a pretty simple pattern. If you've made a couple bracelets before, you can definitely do this. It consists of backward and forward knots. But there are certain things that you need to know and need to be able to do before you go into this tutorial. The first is, of course, be able to recognize the different types of knots and make them. That's probably the most important part, and if you don't know how to do that, there is a tutorial that I made. I'll link it in the card and in the description as well for you. But I also skipped over some parts here. I have already made a teardrop loop to begin my bracelet. I will explain the color order in just a second, but if you don't know how to make teardrop loops, I have a separate tutorial on that as well, which will also be linked in the card and in the description. But that being said, you can also start with other types of starts. I personally prefer the teardrop loop. I think it looks really nice, but if you want to do any other types of starts, you can also do that, and I have a whole playlist full of tutorials on different types of starts and ends, which will also be linked in the card and in the description. Alright, that being said, once again, this is a pretty simple bracelet, but there just are some things that you need to know beforehand. For this bracelet, you have 7 different colors. You've got 6 colors for the gradients, 3 for each gradient, and also 1 color for the outline string. I have chosen the outline string to be this yarn, and it is a black sparkly yarn. You can also see it's kind of fluffy. This is the Alice Simile, and it's the black one. And I chose it because I want this bracelet to have some extra sparkle. But then we also have 3 strings for each of the gradients, and I've got this sort of purple-pink gradient, and then an orange sort of to yellow gradient here. So you need 4 strings for the outline, and 2 strings for all the other colors. If you're doing a loop like me, you're gonna half that, so I cut 2 strings for the black, and then obviously I folded them to create 4, and then the same thing for the other colors. I cut 1 string per color for all the other colors, but then when I folded them, they became 2. I think doing the teardrop loop is probably the easiest and the best because it allows you to straight away go into that V shape of the chevron. So if you're following along with me and you're also doing a teardrop loop, then you want to arrange your strings in this order. Outline color, and then the 3 colors of the first gradient in the order that you want them to appear. So I'm going from darkest to lightest here. Then the outline color once again, and then the second gradient again in the order you want the colors to appear. I'm going from darkest to lightest. And same exact thing on the other side, so these are symmetrical. Each of the strings are about 2 meters long. I obviously folded them so they become 1 meter per string. I did add around 10 centimeters though to the loop color that I did, which I did in black. So one of the black strings is 10 centimeters longer than the others to account for the loop. But alright, that being said, let's get into the actual bracelet. There are only 4 rows of this bracelet that are repeating to create the design. And the first one is extremely simple, and it's just a chevron. So you're gonna grab the 2 outermost strings and bring them in with a chevron. You're gonna do forward knots on the left side and backward knots on the right side to bring these 2 strings into the center. And then when you bring them in, you're gonna connect them. If this is your first time joining me, I speed through this part because I assume you already know how to make the knots. There we go, the first row is just a chevron. The second row is where things start to get a little bit different from the regular chevron. You're gonna grab the outermost string and the 2 strings after it, so the first 3 strings of the gradient, and then do a forward knot onto each of these strings, so 2 forward knots. You're then gonna grab the outline string, which is the next string in this bracelet, and you're gonna do a backward knot onto this string. You're then going to grab the next 3 colors, which are the next gradient, and still holding this same string, you're going to do 3 forward knots, 1 on each of these strings of the next gradient. The next string you encounter is going to be an outline string, and once again, you just do a backward knot here onto the leading string. Now you're going to repeat the same process on the other side, but mirrored. So taking the first 3 strings, separating the outermost one, and doing 2 backward knots. Grabbing the next string, which you encounter, and that's an outline string, you do a forward knot onto the leading string here. Grab the 3 strings of the next gradient, and do 3 backward knots with the leading string. Then the next string is the outline. You're going to do a forward knot onto this leading string. And to end this row, you're just going to connect the 2 leading strings on either side in any knot. I'm just doing a forward knot here because that's easiest for me. The second row is now complete. We are halfway through the repeating pattern. Next up, you grab the outermost string and the string next to it. You just do a forward knot on this side. You then encounter an outline string with which you do a backward knot onto this leading string. And then for the rest of the strings on this side, you're just going to do a chevron. So you're just going in with forward knots with the leading string onto each of the remaining strings on this side of the bracelet. And then repeating the same thing on the other side, but mirrored because it is the opposite side. Taking the 2 outermost strings and starting off with just a backward knot here. Then you encounter the outline string with which you do a forward knot. And then for the rest of the strings here, you do backward knots with the leading string onto them in just a simple chevron. Now we're going into the last row of the repeating pattern. You're going to take the 2 outermost strings, and this time you're going to start off with doing a backward knot with the outline string onto this edge string here. We're then going to grab the leading string and the 3 strings that follow it, which happen to be the 3 strings of the next color gradient, and we're going to do forward knots with the leading string onto these 3 strings. We then encounter the next outline string. We're going to do a backward knot with it. And we're going to do forward knots on the remaining 2 strings on this side. And then the same thing on the other side, but opposite, grabbing the 2 outermost strings, and we're going to start off with a forward knot with the outline string onto the edge string. Then grabbing the 3 colors of the next color gradient, we're just going to do backward knots with the leading string onto each of those. We then do a forward knot with the outline string onto this leading string here. And then backward knots onto all of the remaining strings, as well as joining it with the string from the other side. And that is it. Those are all of the repeating rows in the patterns. There's just 4 of them. It might not look like much right now, but I assure you, if you scroll back to the beginning of this tutorial, we go back in with a chevron with these outermost strings, and then repeat the same exact process for the next color gradient. And you repeat that over and over and over again until the bracelet reaches the length that you want. And this is the design that you're going to end up with. I've already made a couple of these bracelets. I'm currently working on a collection of this pattern because I genuinely really like it. And I think it looks really awesome. So yeah, these 4 rows are all that you need to do to finish this pattern. And the way that I like to end these bracelets is just by doing a triangle end and then some twisted ties, which if you don't know how to make, I also have tutorials on both of those topics, which will be linked in the description as well. I hope this tutorial helped you out. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'll try to answer as many as I can. I would love it if you would consider subscribing as well. The channel is getting close to reaching 100,000 subscribers, which would be an awesome number to hit, and I'd love to have you on board. I want to give a special shout out to my patrons and especially my top supporters whose names are going to appear on screen right now. Thank you guys very much for your support. I really do appreciate it. And if you also want to become a patron, there is a link in the description where you can sign up and get exclusive perks for your donations. I send my top tier patrons packages every other month, which can include materials or even bracelets sometimes. So feel free to join if you want to. I also started streaming on Twitch recently, and I'm planning on doing a live Not With Me session. So if that sounds fun, then subscribe to me on Twitch to get notified every time I stream. But that all being said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I taught you something, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!